Hi everyone, nice to see you all again. Thank you very much, Clarissa and the gang, for inviting me. I'm amazed you keep inviting me, it's despite how I behave. I was asked yesterday, is there going to be any cat porno? Afraid not this year. It's going to be a very quiet presentation. For those of you who don't know me, I work for Cats Protection in the UK. But the animal in the middle, I believe, is called a dog. On the right is a much younger, thinner version of me from about 12 years ago. It's the previous job before I worked for Cats Protection. I'm going to talk about quite a lot of the work of other charities in the UK. There's a lot of really good stuff that goes on, basically. And when I'm done, Suzy, who's one of our amazing volunteers, is actually going to tell you about what she does locally in the patch just north of London, where she works and runs the local Cats Protection group. Okay, so we're good to go. Really what we're going to focus on today is getting past this traditional animal welfare model. And we've seen, I mean, I've got quite a difficult act to follow from Jenny and Sarah now, but the traditional sort of model that we've had is we have the shelter, and we have the dogs, and we have us, and we have them, and that one goes to there. I'm not sure what's happened to the guy in the shelter, because they seem to have stolen his eyes, if you have a look at that photo, but there we go. And the dog's just a bulldog, so, you know, whatever. When I started researching this presentation, I had a quick look on the websites of some of the larger charities from the UK, and I pulled a few of the mission statements. That's from the Blue Cross. We've got the RSPCAs. They're all different lengths of statement there. There's quite a lot of detail there. The RSPCAs is 3 lines. The Mayhew, who I used to work for many years ago, again, a very single, that's 1 sentence looking at that. And our own Cats Protection one is again one of the longer versions. Most organisations, can you put your hand up? Do you all have, those of you that are with NGOs, do you have that kind of a mission statement, a sort of a statement of purpose? Can you put your hand up if you do? Brilliant, okay. The thing that's common to all of those, none of those mission statements or those purpose statements, whatever you want to call them, none of them just say that we're going to run a shelter. The words that you'll see in all of them, I'll flip back, you'll see the word, where are we? So Blue Cross is every animal. All lawful means to the suffering of all animals. We believe that animals, living creatures, are entitled. It's a very broad focus, but the word every and all, because most of these organisations are involved in some way in other work, in community work, proactive and going beyond really working in the shelter environment. I'm going to tell you a bit about my story in animal welfare, take you back to the year 1990, which was an absolutely phenomenal year for music. Any of you that aren't familiar with You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, I'm not going to sing it for you, but I think it's a fantastic song to do with dog behaviour and dogs that bite. You Can't Touch This is brilliant. It was a brilliant year, 1990. And my story started in South London, and I was working at an RSPCA clinic. And the story I'm going to tell you, it involves one of those, which is a shopping cart. It involves a lot of air freshener, because the person I'm going to tell you about, whenever she did come into the hospital, she did leave a little bit of a smell behind her. She came in with a lot of cat baskets in the... Oh. I'm ever so sorry, I wasn't. How did you find me? Well, it's been 20 years.
I've been following your career with interest, young man. You have a bit of weight on you, though.
Only a little bit of weight.
Well, oh! Come to Mummy! You've been saving! Come here.
What's your name?
Margaret.
Hello, Margaret. It's nice to meet you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give a round of applause to Margaret? Have you got room for another one, Margaret?
I think so. Somewhere down here. Oh, I won't quite go on. I'll put them in my bag.
How many cats do you do you have, Margaret?
I've only got 30 now. I really have.
30?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
If I came to see you at your house, how many have you really got?
30 and a bit.
30 and a bit.
35.
Don't worry, you can trust me.
38.
38 more?
48.
48.
Oh, come to mum.
Oh dear. Well,
I was his success story.
you certainly were.
I'll let you get on with it, lad.
Thank you very much. For those of you that don't know, that's my boss.
You're fired, by the way.
And I don't know what's more distracting is seeing my boss dressed as Margaret, Larissa operate a mechanical cat. I didn't think I'd ever see that. Anyway, but there we are. There's the Margaret action figure that you can actually buy. I've seen those. They're great. You can get them on the internet. And she had a lot of them. Basically, it's a lady that used to come into the clinic every couple of times a week with a lot of cats in shopping trolleys and in baskets. She only used to bring the presentable cats to the clinic. She was a cat hoarder, an animal hoarder, a cat lady, whatever you want to call her. She only brought a small number. The problem that we had is really that, I'll put those back for a minute, we don't know what was going on at her house because we didn't ever ask. We never went there. We just saw the same 13 cats that she brought in week after week after week after week. And I was quite new to animal welfare. It was my second year, and I had no idea really what was going on. I was worried about what was going on in that house with all those cats. I mean, you've only got to see Margaret to know, you know, how bad it could have been. But we didn't do very well with that, and I have to say, I've got my hand on my heart, we weren't very geared up to go and visit her at home. So for that, I was left with that feeling that we hadn't handled that particularly well. I was left with that feeling for about 10 years, basically. I was very fortunate. I'm going to take you forward to 2000 now. As you can see, 2000 was another really good year for music, because we had some phenomenal chart successes in the UK, and we had Bob the Builder, Can We Fix It, as well. I was working at the Mayhew Animal Home in North London, which is a charity that many of you will know, and we had a bit of a problem, because at the Mayhew, we had a neutering clinic, we had a neutering theatre, we had a vet, we didn't have enough cats to neuter. Because we operated a clinic, but people would just not turn up for operations. And we had a bit of a think about this. At the time, I was actually working as a veterinary nurse there. And what we decided to do in the end was we had to really go out and get some of these cats in, and make sure that we did neuter these cats in the extreme cases. And that's really how we started. It was a little bit of a plan, and we thought, well look, we need to get off our backsides and go out there into the community. And for those of you that know the Mayhew, it's in the middle of North London. It's in a very, quite a challenged residential area. And we expanded this project. As I said, we started with some of the cat work. We were very good, and Caroline from the Mayhew is here. If you want to have a chat about what, you know, how to do that kind of work in an inner city environment, Caroline's your woman. But we certainly dealt with animal hoarders. We extended our work to dealing with, to visiting and supporting rough sleeping dog owners on the streets of central London. The key thing, particularly with the second project, with the dogs and the homeless, it's not an expensive thing to do. It's a lot cheaper. You can help a lot of dogs and a lot of owners, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper than bringing those animals, than taking more animals into the shelter. It's a very, very good way to use a small amount of money to help a lot of animals. What we had to do to get this, and I was very lucky, we had a very supportive management and a very supportive group of trustees at the time, but to make this happen, we had to go out and do it. We had to go out and start doing it. It was in the evenings and it was during our lunch breaks, and to actually show what we could achieve. And we started, and this is one of the things, if you are going to try and change your organisation, you do need to develop the proof of what you're basically, you think you can achieve, and have the figures and show what you've done, and show the stories. As I said, I followed a very difficult act earlier on, but you know, that kind of thing that just shows animals happy and how animals benefit. Right. I mean, we need to be proactive. People are ignorant, we have issues. We do have people that just don't care. We have situations where a lot of our animal centres are remote and you can't get to them easily, they're not accessible. Quite a lot of the cats protection centres are actually out in rural locations in the countryside, so they're not close to the cities that they serve. If we are going to be proactive, as I said, it doesn't cost much. We're not committing, we're helping a lot of animals, but we're not committing in a big way to house, treat, care for, look after that animal for a long time. We help that animal in a short way, in a small way, for a short period of time, but we make a big difference. Cats protection, we neutered 176,000 cats last year. That was a single thing we did to help all those cats, but we didn't need to take them in. We actually do affect a community, and wider than the community that knows where our shelter is. We actually make ourselves known in the city that we work in. Okay. Oops. And we take the service to the animal, basically, and we're preventative. So who we're trying to reach here, I'm really lucky that we actually have she's very nervous about being here today because she is only 19, but ladies and gentlemen, can you put your hands together for Sarah?
With my dog's ears, because what I do now, I've just been told that you can help me and I need a bit of advice.
Okay. Hi Sarah, nice to meet you. My name's Ian.
Hi. You're not going to take my dog from me, are you?
I'm not, no. What's your dog's name?
Versace.
How long have you had Versace for?
I've had Versace for like 2 months, and I got him when he was like 4 weeks old, but like I wanted a Staffy, and my friend said because he was young, his ears were going the wrong way, but when he got bigger, they'd go up, and they're not.
Can I have a look at Versace?
Yeah, just get him out. It's alright, my love. That's not a Staffy, is it?
Hello.
But he doesn't like his ears being touched because he's a bit embarrassed by them as well.
Can you show me his ears?
Well, what he's done, right, because they've gone down that way and they're meant to be up because he's meant to be a Staffy, I don't think he likes them either because he's been scratching them, and if I touch him now, he started biting me too.
Have you been to the vet with him at all? Have you taken him to the vet?
LOL! I can't afford a vet!
What we'll do, we'll have a chat, because we might be able to help you out in some way, or point you in the direction of a vet that will perhaps be able to have a quick look at him, and it may not cost too much. I think he possibly has got Staffy in him.
Which bit?
The bit that's not the head, possibly.
That bit?
And he's a beautiful dog. You do love him.
I do. I've got a heart with his picture in, and I'm having his name tattooed on my ankle next week.
I think have a chat with me afterwards, and we'll sort out, somewhere for you to go with Versace.
All right.
It's a beautiful dog. Thank you for coming up, Sarah. I hope you weren't too nervous.
That's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, these young teenagers like Sarah, age 19, and Versace, one of the most phenomenal projects I've come across in the last few years is a project called City Dogs, which is run by the Dogs Trust, and it is London focused at the moment, isn't it? If I remember correctly, yeah. And basically, what City Dogs does is it goes out and they form relationships with young people in particularly difficult areas with status dogs and dogs of particular breeds, and they build a long-term working relationship that eventually does lead to the dogs being microchipped and neutered, and it's a very non-judgmental relationship, and owners like Sarah who love her dog, and the first thing that Sarah said to me is, "Are you going to take my dog away?" And that's what really they're trying to get past. It happens, it takes the work out onto the streets, into the local parks, and in the social housing estates, and what they call hangout spots, which is where all the young people like Sarah do sit around and hang out, basically. A couple of other projects. Wood Green has a fantastic education project called Hands On. One of the things that we've done at Cats Protection is we've joined with Wood Green to actually run our neutering, the joint neutering campaign with them, with the education project. So the two go quite closely together in that particular area. What happens as a result of that, by two charities working very closely together, is we have a good education lead into the project. Cats get neutered and cats get microchipped, and we work together. Regionally, we're very strong in that area, and we're trusted, and we do work together, and people do trust us. Our RSPCA in the UK also have a fantastic scheme called the Community Animal Action Weeks. It's very, very simple. The uniformed inspectors, what they do is they have a look at the areas where they get the most cruelty and neglect complaints from, and they go to those areas and they knock on people's doors. And they find the school or the community centre or the youth club, and they actually have road shows. Absolutely phenomenal. Very, very simple idea, and they do in most areas a couple of times a year. And also, you know, if you want to be a little bit clever, like the guys in St Augustine, you have a space shuttle that goes off and picks the cats up, basically. One of the things Cats Protection has done a lot is we've worked with our local municipalities. And Andrew, who's on the left, is a dog warden, and his responsibilities relate only to dogs. But he's joined up with Suzanne, who's a police officer on the right. And what they do, those guys work on the ground all the time with their communities. And working with us, we've managed to actually get some cat neutering done through those routes. So absolutely, you know, it's working together, it's using what you've already got access to. We don't do it everywhere, but we have a growing number of councils that have actually come on board with this. One of the areas, as I say, one of the groups is the Hemel Hempstead Cats Protection, and they've become really our sort of experts on this kind of thing. So I'm going to hand you over to Suzy, who's going to tell you a little bit about their events and how that works, basically.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you see me? Probably more to the point. Okay, right. We're not a large branch of Cats Protection. We're quite small to medium, I'd say. And we are entirely volunteers. We're just one of many Cats Protection local groups spread across the UK. And so this was the exercise that we actually undertook. It's always the technology. Okay, so I'm going to describe, as Ian says, the exercise that we undertook, which was very much us as a bunch of local volunteers, about half a dozen of us, getting out into the community, and for the first time for us as a group, working very much together with other charities and other local bodies, really to try and maximise our effectiveness. And what you can see on the screen there is actually what we used as our local advertising. So that was produced as a poster and both as a sort of a flyer size, actually, to go through people's letterboxes. And just to describe then the partners that we worked with. Just briefly, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these organisations, but just to be clear, the PDSA is the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals in the UK, and basically they provide free or low-cost veterinary and neutering, I believe, services. And then we have the RSPCA, which I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with as a name, but they are a slightly odd organisation. I'm told it's very normal to us in the UK, but they have a sort of quasi-legal role. I mean, they work obviously primarily to prevent cruelty, as you know, I've seen many of you belong to the parallel organisations in other countries. And Cats Protection, I think we can probably take as read in this forum. But the other partner was our local district council, our municipality, which is called the Borough of Dacorum. And so in fact, the local initiative was started by our dog warden. And she is an employee of the Borough Council working in the Environmental Health Department. And just to say that CP's aims, that Ian had them up there on the slide, but we're talking about education, rehoming and neutering, and hopefully we ticked 2 of those boxes by actually taking part in this particular initiative. So where did we go to actually find these people, to reach out to people rather than, as Ian says, expecting them to come to us? Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so we went where they are. So we identified some of the areas, as Ian mentioned that the RSPCA does in their initiatives. We picked some areas where locally there's certainly a higher incidence of sort of what are the so-called status dogs, typically bull terriers, bull breeds, that sort of thing. And so we identified the sorts of areas where we could find them locally, or more likely to find those types of dogs and owners locally. And so for convenience, we went to their local community centres, which typically were by the local parade, small areas of shops. So basically, as Ian says, that was like a hangout area, so people would be around there anyway. We also went for sheer numbers to places like supermarket car parks, so, you know, high traffic areas. So indeed, this is my local branch of Sainsbury's, for those of you familiar with supermarkets in the UK. And also we went to local parks and dog walking areas. Now it was a rather different audience really. They weren't exactly the prime target audience for our neutering efforts, but certainly it was a very high visibility event. We went to a local beauty spot called Ashridge Common, and certainly we had a lot of visitors there who probably otherwise would not be aware at all of our local activities. And so when did we do this? Well, we've taken part in this for 2 years. We actually did an initial 2-day exercise back in 2010, which was successful enough that we decided we would do 5 days this year, enabling us to spread our efforts more widely across the borough. And it was in what we laughingly called summer in the UK this year. I mean, what you're looking for, obviously, is a time when people are likely to be out and about with their dogs, specifically in this case. And also we wouldn't mind being out and about. We covered both weekdays and the weekend, obviously because of availability, maximising our availability to our target audience. And we were there all day, but also one would continue on into the evening if it's a suitable area, clearly if it's safe and appropriate to do that. I should though say it was essential to do something before we ever got to this point, which was actually to do advanced publicity. I mean, it's very simple, very obvious. But what we did, you can see our local paper there, free paper. We put sort of A4 size advertising into the local press. We also put posters wherever we thought people would see them. We tied them onto traffic lights. We posted them on local roundabouts on busy roads, and we put them up on places like bus stops, because our experience is that our neutering campaigns are that's quite a successful way to target the people that Cats Protection at least want to reach. And we also had a smaller version of the flyer that you see there as the poster. We had that flyer size, A5 size, and we actually door dropped them through the letterboxes of the local, some of the local housing estates. And all of that was actually quite time consuming and quite slow in some cases, but obviously if you don't tell people about it, they're not going to come and see you when you're standing there, which would be much more of a waste of time. So I talked about who our partners were generally, but I'll move on now just to cover exactly who did what on the day, because obviously across the range of people and organisations represented, you don't want to duplicate effort. You want to maximise what you're doing, you know, without overlapping really with what anyone else is up to. So, the PDSA, essentially they have a fleet of these very nice, very smart vans, ranging from the size that you see here through to a large articulated lorry. And a good tip is to make sure which one's actually turning up in your community centre car park, because if you get that wrong, there could be a bit of a problem. So they were dispensing behavioural advice and doing dog health checks for reasons of, they say it's for reasons of safety. I mean, the van is essentially, it's open at the back and it's open here as the doorway that you can see. But people are going in, entering the van for the health check. And they just won't do cats because they just say clearly it's not safe. You know, they don't want to do it in a sort of closed environment. So the health checks are restricted just to dogs. And they also, there's a stand to the right there of information leaflets which the public can take away. Now what's in the van is a very nice, smiley, friendly vet nurse. And she's accompanied by the chap you see there, and he acts as the driver of the van and also as a receptionist for people arriving for the event. So he will manage the queue. I don't have any good photos from this year, but certainly from last year, when sadly I didn't take any photos, we arrived and on the first morning in one of our prime target areas, and there must have been 50 people in a queue, 45 of whom probably had what we in the UK term status dogs. And so he will manage the queue, he will take the people's names, tell them it'll be 20 minutes before you're called, whatever it might be, or even we've closed for the day, you'll have to come back tomorrow, because it was a very, very busy event. As it's a vet nurse and not a vet, clearly there is a limit to the advice and care that can be given, but they're very meticulous obviously about referring, really stressing that the owner should take the dog to go and see a vet if there's some problem that they can't solve, which does need to be resolved. And then I mentioned our dog warden. Now, she isn't a dog catcher in the sense that some of you may be familiar with. She does have responsibility for lost and stray dogs, but mainly she works in a positive way with the local community, working on issues around responsible dog ownership, so fouling and barking and general nuisance issues. At the event, she was there giving general advice. She also had information leaflets that she could give out, and she was generally handing out poop bags as something for people to take away with them. And she was definitely dealing with some issues. Some people who didn't have dogs were coming up and asking her for advice, for what was perceived as perhaps a neighbour's problem dog. So she was working on it, certainly. And the RSPCA, they gave out dog neutering vouchers. They did on-the-spot, low-cost microchipping, and I think they were asking for a donation for flea and worm treatments, and they also carried out claw clipping. They did dogs and they did cats, where we were able to go into a safe space in one of the local community centres. Clearly that's not something that you want to tackle sort of out there in a car park on the loose. A woman did come up and present me with a very large and not very happy looking cat in a carrier and said, "Can you clip his claws, dear?" And I said, "Absolutely not, I'm afraid." It was a nice idea, but not there and then. But anyway, so what were we there for? Cats Protection. We were there primarily handing out cat neutering vouchers. We were doing free cat neutering. And we also had a range, which I know some of you have picked up already from the stand, from our stand outside, of Cats Protection's excellent information and advice leaflets. And just to say to those of you, if you don't pick up a leaflet, you can always download them from the Cats Protection website later, should you decide you want one. Okay, but they are very, very valuable, very useful things. And we were able to help people with a range of issues, from issues like spraying, scratching. Sometimes people came and asked us for advice on feeding, just general sorts of things, but I think they really did provide a useful service to people. What we also did, rather than just giving a voucher to people who needed one there and then at that point, we also took the details of people who had perhaps very young kittens that were too young to be neutered at the time. And then we also, and the lady with her back to us in the Cats Protection blue t-shirt with the yellow on is Ali, who's our neutering officer in the branch. And so what we were doing, what she's doing there, was very much going and speaking to everyone who attended the event as far as possible. So not just the people who came up to our stand, but everyone who was there, to ask them, did they know anyone who had a cat? Did they have a friend, neighbour, relative, or whoever who had a cat? Did they know anyone with a kitten that needed neutering? Did they know, could they put posters up for us? Could they go to their local shops and put a poster up? We really were trying to maximise our reach, absolutely, as much as possible, beyond just those people who turned up there on the day. But I was saying it's very important to do publicity before the event. Believe me, it's also very, very important to follow up after the event. And basically that means an awful lot of phone calls. Ali's phone was red hot, actually trying to make contact with people to make sure that these vouchers were used. And I don't think it's saying too much to say that some of the people that we were handing out vouchers to are perhaps the sort of people who are maybe a bit lazy. Actually sorting out their animals' welfare is not necessarily uppermost in their mind, and therefore we had to prompt them, and it did take a lot of work. I wouldn't underestimate the amount of time and effort that was put in at that stage to just keep on calling until the confirmation has come back that that cat or kitten or dog has actually been neutered. So to move on briefly to what we actually achieved. On the day, we had over 600 visitors to the event, over 5 days, I should say. They were very pleased in the van that they managed to do 152 dog health checks. That was a fantastic turnover of animals through the van. We gave out 72 neutering vouchers at that point, at the point of sale, as it were. People giving help and advice, etc. We had one case of a kitten breeder. Someone came to us and told us that they actually had homed a kitten, which turned out then to become very sick. Anyway, we were able to get the RSPCA inspectorate to deal with that virtually immediately, so that was something that we were extremely pleased with. Though to look at what we achieved longer term, which I think is obviously more important, we achieved a lot of awareness raising for each of the partners involved. We obviously did the advanced publicity, we had coverage in the local media, the local mayor came and we had photos taken and that sort of thing, so they appeared in the local press after the event. We did actually recruit a couple of volunteers who came and said, oh, I didn't know there was a branch of so-and-so locally, can we help you? So that was great. We built great relationships with the other partners, where perhaps there'd previously been a sort of maybe them and us slightly relationship. It actually, we know each other, we know we can trust each other, we work together well, and we know who to approach if there's a problem that we can't solve. And in fact, the local authority was delighted because their dog warden won the Innovator of the Year award, which is apparently quite a prestigious thing to win in the UK local authority sector. And I should say, what I didn't put on the slide, because these were written a month or so ago, is we're only now realising how much the benefit is continuing in that I checked with Ali, our neutering officer, and we now realise that calls to our neutering helpline that she runs actually are running at double compared to the same period last year. So it really, really has had a big effect. All the different components of it actually have had a huge effect. Now, but tangibly, for me as a CP volunteer, most importantly, what did we achieve? We definitely have prevented many, many unwanted litters, at least 7,500 kittens over 5 years, even using a fairly conservative estimate of the sort of multiplier of having an an unneutered cat female out there. And so while this was my last foster litter, and while I hugely enjoyed looking after them, I actually much more enjoy knowing that we've made a real difference to overpopulation, at least in our local small area. And in conclusion, definitely by getting out there, by going out to the community rather than waiting for them to come to us, by working together with other charities and other bodies, we definitely multiplied our effectiveness, and I heartily recommend it to any of you for whom that type of activity is feasible. I got a light tan, which was great, which was probably about the only decent bit of weather we did have this summer. And anyway, so the cat, I think, yes, that cat got a microchip monitoring voucher. The dog got a health check. The owner, sadly, probably didn't actually get the brain transplant that she possibly needed. But you can't get everything, can you? And so it really was a case of happiness all round. And I think perhaps I'm allowed to say that because I'm actually not official in the sense that most of you are. And actually, oddly enough, although I didn't plan it that way, here we are, having come full circle back from Ian starting with the shopping trolley, and here I am back with one now.